Hello and welcome to the Talking City podcast. My name is Seb Parkinson. I'm going to hand you over in a second to Tyrone Marshall, one of our senior football writers here at the Manchester Evening News. He has sat down for a very, very special interview with David Bernstein. Now, David Bernstein is releasing a book which is due out on the 11th of March called We Were Really There, The Rebirth of Manchester City. Now, I'll just read you the description of the book. This is a story of how Manchester City was saved from oblivion, told by the man who oversaw the rescue operation. Without David Bernstein's work in 5 critical years as chairman, it is impossible to see how the 2008 takeover, which paved the way for Pep Guardiola, an unprecedented success at Manchester City, came to be. David Bernstein sat down with Ty for around 25 to 30 minutes to talk everything about his time at the club, the ups and downs, and basically what was going on at Old Trafford and whether that affected things. It's a really, really, really good chat, and there's a little bit about Roy Keane there and his lack of forgiveness for the Irishman. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this wonderful, wonderful interview.
Okay, so David, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Talking City podcast. First of all, tell us about the idea of writing the book and how you sort of found the process of going through it and reminiscing about all those memories of your time at City.
Yeah, it was been a very exciting project, really. I was asked by quite a few people to think about doing something like this, and in the end, I took the plunge and working with Tim Witch, who's been helped me enormously putting this together. It brought back a lot of fantastic memories. I think the reason that I really wanted to do this is that we call it the rebirth of Manchester City, and it is a rebirth. And I think the fact that we've moved the club from where it was when I took over in the more or less the third level of English football to become world champions, albeit 20 years later, is an amazing story. And, a lot of younger people particularly will think this began when our tremendous Abu Dhabi owners, came into the picture. But really and truly, had we not done this groundwork and done all the work we did over 5 years from 1998 and changed the club, did the new stadium deal, got a new training ground, just brought the club forward really in the last 100 years. In 5 from the 1920s really up to date, then I don't think the Abu Dhabi deal would ever have happened. So I think it's a great story of change, of how to change an organisation, of transformation, and within the book are a lot of interesting, I think, stories and recounting some details about all manner of things with the managers, with deals, with all sorts of things we had to do to get the club right.
Yeah, absolutely. And you write in the book about your history of supporting City and watching City. I mean, it must have been a very proud day when you became chairman, but it was clear as well that you probably inherited a club that was in a bit of a state in March 98, really.
Well, it was. It was in a terrible state. And I think a lot of people were very nervous about dealing with the club. The fans were very upset. They were very sort of mutualist frame of mind. They'd sort of threatened my predecessor in a number of ways. But in a way, the extent of the problems I felt was an opportunity, because although things were really bad, the strength of the problems, the scale of the problems, made radical change possible. And people really left it to me for a period of time, surrounded by a very good team that were built up. But they let me lead this change with very little opposition, and things I don't think we could have done before we were able to do, because we left no stones unturned in taking the club forward.
Yeah, there was no kind of trepidation then at doing the job, because obviously within a couple of months the club were relegated into the third tier. It was clearly dark times, but you kind of saw that as an opportunity then, really.
Exactly. I think I did. I think there was a lot of low-hanging fruit. There were some easy things to do. There were some very, very difficult things to do. And I felt And the book is partly about change and transformation and how to revitalize an underperforming organization. But some of the things we did were sort of real hard decisions. I mean, there's the stadium, the training ground, and so on. Other things were sort of symbolic to show to the fans that this really was going to be something different, that we wouldn't shy away from the difficult decisions, and we'd be really radical when we needed to be.
Yeah, the title of the book is brilliant. We were really there, and obviously that season in the third tier was We're Not Really Here. Obviously the famous City song. I mean, there's some great stories in that book about the club you inherited and divisions there at the time. But it's clear that that day, the May the 30th, 1999, is massive in the club's history, isn't it? I mean, when you took your seat in the Royal Box at Wembley that day, I guess there was a lot of pride, but it must have been an incredibly nerve-wracking day for you as well.
It was the most tense, nerve-wracking sporting experience I've ever had or ever will have. Yes, the scale of the importance of the result was huge. Had we not gone up, it is possible that we could never have done the new stadium deal. And if we hadn't done the new stadium deal, then I don't think the Abu Dhabi people would ever have come in. History would have been totally different. So that match was vital. And of course, to be 2 goals down with 1 minute to go, and then to win the match was just quite extraordinary. I've never quite recovered from it. It was such an extraordinary moment. I think without question, the most important match in the club's history.
Yeah,
I say that quite unequivocally. I know we had we won the Premier League for the first time with the Guerrero's goal and so on, and that was tremendous. Of course it was, but this was sort of a life and death match, and we came through with the most extraordinary circumstances.
Can you still remember now, kind of the feelings at 2-0 down? Obviously, City weren't 2-0 down for that long, but obviously there was the exodus of fans. Do you still vividly picture being at Wembley, seeing those fans leaving and what was going through?
As though it was yesterday. I can see that huge Wembley scoreboard, Gillingham 2, Man City 0. The Gillingham fans singing away, their dark blue flags flying away, and I was feeling and saying to myself, "My God, we've worked so hard, and I thought we did so many of the right things to get to where we've got to. What are we going to do now? This is going to be really hard next season. Much tougher in a way than the season we've just been through." And then we get the first goal, and I entitled one of the chapters 89-25 because that is the time when, just before we scored the Kevin Haaland goal, when a cross one of our players just touched the boot of a Gillingham player and gave us the throw on that they could have had. And from the throw we scored and so on. And then I thought, of course, typical City, 1 goal is too little too late. And then, of course, Paul Dickov does what he did, and that was an extraordinary moment.
Yeah.
But now we hadn't won the match there. We had to win a penalty shootout. But somehow that seemed to be inevitable once we got the 2 goals back. I couldn't imagine us losing then.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because the moment everyone remembers from that game is Dickov scoring. And in your memory now, it kind of feels like it ends there in a way, that the story ends there. But obviously it didn't, did it? It was 30 minutes of extra time, a penalty shootout. And we talk about typical City a lot, but did it kind of feel that day that it was, once that goal had gone in, it was destined to happen for you?
Well, it did. And of course, I think we were celebration at the end of the match. It was always all highly memorable. And I think that on that day, in a way, that typical City thing began to go away. We pulled something back from the brink of disaster, and that began to generate the momentum that was so important. And then we got, of course, the promotion the following year. And although we had a setback the year after, I think there was enough momentum then, and with Kevin Keegan coming in to get back straight away, that was vital. We got back the second time. So we had 3 promotions in 4 years. And of course, the club has never really looked back since then. Certainly hasn't been relegated since then. And now, of course, we are where we are.
Yeah. Did you feel after you'd won that playoff final that, right, this is the start of something now? Obviously, you had another league to go through, but did it feel like we're on the right track now? We're moving in the right direction.
It did. It was a sign, but you could imagine the fillip of winning an important match in that way was almost like a miracle to have won that match. Yes, it gave us tremendous confidence, and it gave Joe Royle confidence, and we were able, of course, then to build on the team a bit. We could bring in, some championship type players rather than being in the third level of football. So definitely, it gave us a platform to move on.
Yeah.
Had we not won that game, I think history would have been very, very different.
Yeah, you still write in the book about kind of the financial difficulties the club still had at times and trying to sort of level things out. And there's the amazing story about Wimbledon offering to merge, which when you think about it now is absolutely incredible, isn't it? I mean, you clearly gave it.
It was pretty incredible then, to be honest. I mean, I mentioned in the book, but it was never really seriously considered. I mean, I would have been shot at dawn had I done something like that. But they say they saw an opportunity to use their Premier League status to achieve the background, the history, and the scale of our club. It was from their point of view, it was quite a sort of clever idea, but it was never going to work, and something I could never. If we were going to succeed, it had to be done keeping the purity of the club, keeping the history of the club, and not having any fancy changes like that.
Yeah, you mentioned the interest from David Murray as well. It's amazing to look back and think that these people in Wimbledon saw City as an opportunity, really, when they are a massive club in their own right and now one of the biggest clubs in the world in their own right. But I guess it shows the standing of the club, really, in the early days of your chairmanship.
Well, exactly. We remember Main Road was described as the theatre of comedy. At one time, I used to say, well, after a year or two, well, nobody's laughing now. Our performances, and of course at that time, Man United were reigning supreme and had done the treble and had that fantastic European Cup and so on. And we were so far behind them in every respect. But I did say even then that my ambition was that Manchester would become the Milan of English football with two great clubs in it, right? I must say, I didn't expect to leave United trailing or in our wake as they are now. That I never expected, but I really did have the hope and the ambition that we would draw level with the big clubs in England, become one of that sort of top group. Of course, we've actually gone way ahead of that.
Yeah, and what did United's success kind of play on your mind at any point at that time? Obviously, they did the treble the year you guys got promoted back out of League One. Was it almost like the two clubs were on a separate path at that time? Was it kind of anything you were thinking about, or?
No, the clubs were so far apart, really. I did, enough to think about dealing with real issues in the division we were in, and all the problems that we had, the challenges that we had. I didn't really have much time to think about United. They were, as I say, they were a different planet at that stage. From us, I was more concerned about beating York City and Lincoln City, or at least losing to York as we did, and losing to Lincoln and losing twice to Wickham. We lost twice in the same season in the league. Those are the sort of things I was really worried about. But United were always there. Back in your mind, you thought one day we'll catch them.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to look back at those York and Wickham games now and laugh about them, really, isn't it? They turned out right in the end.
It is. Macclesfield.
Macclesfield, yeah. Local derbies against Macclesfield.
Yeah.
We've teamed up with Manchester City to bring one listener the ultimate Manchester City fan experience. Immerse yourself in City's state-of-the-art stadium tour experience, featuring all three of the treble winners' trophies, as well as a first-hand feel as you walk out from the Etihad Stadium glass tunnel. But that's not all. Not only will you have a full tour of the stadium in all its glory, you will sit in Pep Guardiola's seat on the touchline to soak up that matchday feel, as well as experience the newly updated virtual press room, where you can sit next to the likes of Pep Guardiola himself, Manuel Akanji, Nathan Ake, and Erling Haaland. If you want to be in with a chance of winning this fantastic prize, all you have to do is subscribe to the Talking City podcast and leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and email a screenshot with your name, location, and contact information to talkingcitypod, that's talkingcitypod @gmail.com. and we will announce the winner very soon. Good luck.
The 2 promotions in 2 years, getting back in the Premier League that quickly, how much of a difference did that make to what you were able to do at the club?
Oh, huge. I mean, it gave us confidence, it gave us credibility, it enabled us to start to raise some finance. I mean, we were never overflowed with money, but at least we had some funds to play with. It enabled us, so importantly, to complete the deal for the new stadium with Sport England and the City Council, and a very good deal, if I may say so myself. One of the best deals ever done in football. I mean, the stadium cost in total about 150 million, of which we only had to pay about 10 million towards that, and we were effectively given a wonderful stadium like that. So that I think was a sort of deal of the century in terms of getting a stadium. So yes, it was crucial. And although we did get that relegation the following season, that wasn't, we felt we had to get back, but we didn't feel in a way too depressed about that somehow. Because we'd achieved so much. We felt that was a setback, but it was we would overcome that, which we did.
I think one of the most kind of emotive passages in a way in the book I find was Roy Keane and Alfie Haaland and what went on around that. I mean, you describe it as a premeditated assault in the book. I think it's pretty clear that's what it was, really. You say you've never forgiven Roy Keane, still can't watch him as a pundit. Yep. Even all these years on, it's clear that it's still an issue that is, I guess, it's close to your heart in a way, isn't it? It's something that was just wrong, wasn't it?
Well, it's a character weakness of mine, probably. I don't forgive easily, and it was the blatant nature of that. The fact that people knew he was going to do it. I mean, he was quite open about it, and he boasted about it. He stood over the injured Haaland and said that left him well, serves you right, and so on. So and I think he wrote about it afterwards. I got fined very heavily by the Football Association. So it was a pretty. I mean, things happen in football. It's a tough game, and people get injured. But this was a little bit different. This was premeditated and something that he actually boasted about. Yeah,
and you write a lot in the book about the kind of the medical reports and what came back, and obviously Alfie already had issues with his knees, but that certainly pushed him closer to retirement, didn't it? That tackle and the knock-on effects, and medically and in terms of confidence around his body, I guess it led to the end of his City career.
I think so. His career and his football career not that long afterwards. Yeah. Of course, it's wonderful that he's now got a son who's one of the greatest players in the world. I mean, that must be a great compensation to him. And the way history has turned on itself. It's wonderful to have a player that quality with the name Haaland play for the club.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, do you think justice was ever done in that case? You write in the book about how the club looked at the potential of suing Roy Keane. Do you think justice was done in the end, or did he still get away with it?
In the end, with these things, you have to take advice. You've got to be sensible. You get very emotional about things, but if you start to get over emotional and start go down legal routes, not going to work. It only causes heartache and a loss for everybody. So I think we had to take the decisions that we did. I was reluctant to do it, but that was the advice we had, the medical advice that we had, the legal advice that we had. So. So we are, we were where we were, but it was a very sad episode.
Yeah, it's clear in the book that you kind of wanted to pursue it as far as you could, really, for the club and for Alfie, I guess.
Well, absolutely. Well, we did, and we did pursue it as far as we sensibly could. Yes.
And you mentioned his son there. I mean, it must feel quite strange in a way to watch Manchester City now and see that name popping up on the score sheet pretty much every week.
Well, it's very, very odd. I've also been able to see Kasper Schmeichel. Yeah, and go. When we had Peter playing for the club for a while, they're an extraordinary time because, of course, so much time has passed already. I can't believe we're talking about 20, 25 years ago. Yeah, it's extraordinary. It seems to have gone into a flash. But but they are. But I'm hoping that the book provides a lot of interesting stories from the inside. Oh, sorry,
That's good.
sorry about that.
That's right.
The book provides a lot of interesting stories from the inside of a club during a very, very dynamic period when so much happened in a short time.
You paint quite a vivid picture as well of the two managers that you had and your relationships with them and how they differ. I mean, looking back now, how did you find Joe and Kevin? It's clear your relationship with Joe kind of fell apart at the time and hasn't really recovered.
Well, it did. And I'm very sorry that it did. I mean, my relationship with Joe was very close for 2 or 3 years. I enjoyed it enormously. I like working with him. We achieved real success together. And I was really sorry in the end when we got relegated. Things hadn't worked out. The book explains in some detail what happened, culminating in a dinner that we had together when I raised, I think it was 13 different issues with him, and didn't really get the response I was hoping for. And then of course, when I was more or less left the club by then, but he sued the club for compensation because he thought he hadn't been paid off in the right sort of way, and that was sad as well. So, I was very sad because the first 2 or 3 years with Joe were the best years I had in sports, and I would never forget it. Kevin was a different kettle of fish. We brought Kevin in to give us a dynamic response to being relegated and to get up straight away, give us some impetus, and he did without any question. We had a terrific first year with 100 goals, 100 points, and there were no playoffs or anything necessarily there. We walked away with the championship. But Kevin is Kevin. I think we knew the animal when we took him on. He was very demanding. The problem was that some of the demands just weren't realistic. And in the end, there were some things I was prepared to do and some things I found really difficult. And this culminated with the Robbie Fowler signing. Kevin was very fixated on it. Kevin almost wanted to pay a fee for a player who's at that stage his injury record wasn't great. I mean, he'd been one of the great strikers of all time, but I think he was past his best by then. And I felt we could get him on a pay for play basis without a fee at all. But Kevin got close to my colleagues, to John Ward and David Bernstein, who provided a lot of the funding for the clubs. And one way or another, I found myself sort of negotiating against Leeds United, and against my own team, my own people. And that wasn't comfortable or easy. And in the end, I think history will show that I was right. That Robbie did not have a great time at City. He was past his best because of injuries, and it didn't work out very well. But by then, for me, it was too late.
Yeah. Did that kind of bring an end to your spell as chairman, maybe quicker than you expected it to? Because it's quite clear.
It did. I mean, yes, definitely. I mean, within even 6 months before that, we were in such a strong position. They're going so well. I actually remember saying at a board meeting to the board, guys, we have got a situation. It's very unusual. We're really together. We're working as a tight team. There's no leaks to the press or to the media. We've got the fans totally on board. This is something I said, this won't last. I'm sure it won't last, but let's make it last as long as we possibly can. And then these pressures came. One or two other things happened as well. It wasn't just the Robbie Fowler deal. There's other things as well. And in March 2003, I just felt the thing was beginning to sort of fall apart and fragment. And all the things I've been so proud of and we were doing so well were not working as well. And I just wasn't prepared to operate in that way.
Yeah. Do you have any regrets? Any regrets looking back?
No, I don't. I think the situation was becoming impossible for me to do things. I love the club. Frankly, I love the club too much to do things the wrong way. And just to hang on, and then things got more and more difficult. There'd be more and more leaks in the media and whatever else. It's not the right way to run it. So No, I think it was tough. It was really tough, and I missed it totally. But I think it was the right decision, and I've got no regrets at all. No.
Yeah, and looking at the club now, I guess a huge part of your legacy is the stadium they play in, isn't it?
Well, it is. It is. I'm so proud of that. I think the one thing that would have happened, major thing that would have happened differently had I stayed on, is that the Thaksin Shinawatra deal, that the sale to him would not have taken place. I think the club was getting itself again into a very difficult financial situation, and did a bad deal to get out of it by selling to him, and he sold it on a few years later at a profit, at quite a big profit, and that profit shouldn't have gone to him. That profit should have gone to the existing shareholders, mainly the fans. They were the shareholders, about 2,000 fans who were shareholders, and they, in the end, sold at an undervalue, and they were the losers, actually. So although it's worked out wonderfully well in the end, there's that interim period that really should have been avoided.
Yeah.
That's an important element of this book, I think, that, all's well that ends well. You can't argue with that. But the journey there should have been a little bit different. And the fans certainly would have been better off financially.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of where they are now, though, and the attractiveness of the club, I guess, to Thaksin Shinawatra and to the Abu Dhabi group, that move away from Main Road to the city of Manchester, a name that you came up with, I believe, that kind of paved the way for everything that followed, because that stadium made City an attractive club for investors, didn't it?
Definitely. I think I can say for certain they would not have bought the club if they'd been playing at Main Road still. The stadium added to everything else that the club had, and the history and the support and so on, made it extremely attractive. Otherwise, I think City could have been a little bit more like Everton. Now, another very fine club, a really great club, but who are struggling. And they've never got anywhere near catching up their big neighbours. I think history would be very different.
Yeah, and not only did the club move to a brilliant new stadium, but they got a phenomenally good deal for it as well.
Absolutely, as I said before, absolutely. And there was a nice little story. It's in the book that I went to a match. We had a match at Newcastle, and Sir John Hall, a very astute businessman, was their chairman. And I was in their director's room. He came up to me and said, "Hey, David," he said, "hey, that's such a deal." He said, "There's something funny going on in Manchester. A bit funny, funny business there." He was, intimating there was something going on behind the scenes, which there certainly wasn't. But I think it was the envy of football. People say, "Well, how can City have done this amazing deal for this fantastic stadium, but it hardly cost them anything?" And I think we took, we saw an opportunity with the Commonwealth Games and the fact that the City of Manchester wanted a first-class stadium for the Commonwealth Games, and we took a very strong negotiating position, considering we had a very weak hand to play, and said, "Look, yes, we'd love the new stadium, but it's got to be blue, got to be a proper stadium for our supporters. It can't have an athletics track afterwards. It can't be like the Olympic Stadium that West Ham played at." And we could hold 34,000 people at Main Road. We'll only pay a rental on the attendances above 34,000. We got all those things and more.
Definitely. And do you go back very often these days?
No, I don't go back very often. I think what happened, because of the Shinawatra thing, which I opposed very strongly, I got very distant from the club very quickly. And although I'm on reasonable terms with the present people, I've never had a sort of an active relationship. So I see them when they're in London, and of course I watch the matches on television, including last night. All the time. But I don't get up there as much as I really would like to.
When you see them winning trophies, winning leagues in that stadium, you must still feel a sense of pride, really, at your involvement in laying the foundations for that.
I feel that's why I've written the book. Really, I think so. So I like I like that people realise what happened, what the real history was, what we went through to lay those foundations, and I feel absolutely great pride to see this club. I mean, you saw them last night playing in Copenhagen. I mean, there was a different level completely from the opposition. I mean, the opposition could hardly get hold of the ball. I mean, I think honestly, one could say that if they win the league this year, It'll be the first time ever a club's won the top division 4 times in a row. And if they did win the Champions League, if they did, for a second year in a row, I think they can claim it to be the best English side of all time. You know, that includes the great Arsenal side, or the Spurs double side, or the Man United side. So I think no side would have achieved the success of Manchester City. That is quite extraordinary.
Yeah, it is quite extraordinary when you think back to that season, that first full season of yours, and getting out of League One, and how valuable that was. Some great stories in that book, David. We were really there from Pitch Publishing, out on March the 11th. I think it's going to be a great read for every City fan. I think, like you say, there's some fantastic untold stories in there. So thanks very much for your time, and thanks for joining us.
We're great to speak to you. All the very best.